Well, hello there. Thanks for joining me. This is episode 8 of the podcast digest, Do It Clockwise. And I'm back again for another podcast digest. Thank you so much for spending the time here to join me to talk about some great podcasts, talk about some technology. Got a little different subject for you here this evening. But first, before I do that, and I've been saying this, I think just about every episode, and you know what? I don't think I'm going to stop. Thank you for taking this time to join me, Dan Lizette, here on the Podcast Digest. And I cannot thank you all enough for downloading, for subscribing, for leaving the great iTunes reviews and the ratings on Stitcher. It's really very much appreciated. We're here back for episode 8. Episode 7 last week was huge. Absolutely the best one so far. I'd like to think that every week is the best one so far, but based on the response from last week's episode, I think it's safe to say that that one takes the top. Let's see if we can have this one have similar success. So before I begin, I want to just briefly touch on something. If you went to my website today, thepodcastdigest.info, I put a little blurb about this, and I don't know why I'm taking pride in this, but I think it's worth mentioning. A couple episodes ago, I talked about ProfitCast with The Real Brian. Great show, still going on, and really enjoy his content there. But through that show and similar type of shows with Dave Jackson or Cliff Ravenscraft, shows about podcasting basically, they talk a lot about how new shows so often start, and there's so many dead shows in the iTunes catalog, shows that only had a few episodes and then they died off. In fact, I've heard a lot about the number episode 7, that apparently a lot of new shows that start up tend to get 7 episodes in, and it's going beyond that tends to be the marker of defining if a podcast will continue, if the host has interest, if there is receptivity from listeners, and so on and so forth. Well, I go back to the first thing I said on this week's show. This is episode 8, guys. I'm here to stay. I'm really enjoying doing this. I hope you're enjoying listening to it. And one more time, thanks for joining me. All right, so let's get started with this week's show. Typically, my opening section, if you will, I've been calling Listener Pro Tips. I'm going to alter that just ever so slightly this week. I'm going to call this a technology pro tip, if you will. If you haven't gained it through my show recommendations or through my general conversation here on the show, I am somewhat of a technology hound, technology geek, if you will. I love technology. I love all things, especially mobile and consumer technology. And I got a new piece of mobile technology I wanted to talk about here briefly and recommend to those of you who may have been considering it. So smartwatches are all the rage right now. Apple had their recent Apple Watch announcement. Samsung's been pumping out a new smartwatch every couple of weeks, it seems, and there are so many more entrants seemingly coming into the marketplace on a weekly basis. Well, the granddaddy of them all, if you will, is the Pebble. And if you follow tech news at all, especially recently, Pebble's been making some news. They've done some recent updates, including to their pricing structure. They recently dropped their base model or original plastic model to $99 and their steel model to $199. Each of those represents a $50 price reduction. Up to this point, I've not yet owned a smartwatch, but I was interested, as I tend to be in so many pieces of technology, and decided, because I had some Best Buy reward coupons laying around, that it was time to take the plunge with the base model $99 Pebble in black. Figured that it was low enough investment that if I didn't like it or didn't work for me, I wouldn't feel as bad as if, parting with hundreds and hundreds of dollars. So I did it. And let me tell you what, I really like it. And I want to recommend it to you if you've considered it. The Pebble in its base model, basically, it's very light. It's easy to wear. It's got a nice, decent enough band. It's water resistant, shower, rain, what have you. Don't go necessarily deep diving with it, although they do say you could swim with it. I would say that it probably is a better fit for a man than a woman. It's a little on the bigger side, but not so much that it looks gaudy. I've got the standard black one. I've worn it with, my suit when I'm DJing weddings, and it seems to fit right in place. And of course, its primary focus is to bring your phone notifications up from your lock screen to your wrist. So I, like you, probably receive a variety of notifications throughout the day. And sometimes my phone is in my pocket, sometimes my phone's lying on my desk, or sometimes I'm just not in a position where I can pull it out and take a look at it. Maybe I'm in a meeting or something of that nature. having them come to your wrist is so extraordinarily convenient. And if you're using a Pebble with an iPhone, you can actually click the middle button on the right and it will dismiss that notification, not only from your Pebble, but also from the phone itself. So it's a nice way to sort of triage notifications so when you do get back to your phone, they've not completely piled up on you. The device is somewhat limited in its scope. You can only have 8 applications or watch faces on the watch at any given time, but there's a very wide variety, especially compared to other smartwatches out there. Android Wear is just now getting off the ground, and of course the iWatch isn't even out yet, or the Apple Watch as they call it. And some of the applications are fairly simple, but ESPN's got a great one. I can check scores right there. There's some neat weather apps and some watch faces. I mean, everything you could possibly think about with a watch face. I've got just a standard weather channel one showing me the time and current weather. It's great though. I start my day, I throw my watch on, right there is the weather, and I know exactly what I'm about to walk outside into, which is pretty nice here in southeastern Pennsylvania to know that right off the bat. But it is great at what it does. It doesn't go for too much. The battery life lasts forever. I do charge it nightly just because I charge everything nightly, even if it's only a few percentage points down, like maybe my iPad or something of that nature. But the battery life is great. You could literally take it for a weekend, on a weekend trip, not have to worry about the charger. They say 5 to 7 days, and I've not even come close to it. So besides my general desire and love for technology and being a geek on getting new things all the time, why do I bring it up here on the Podcast Digest? Well, it does have one functionality that I'd like to highlight to you. If you're listening to my show, the Podcast Digest, I imagine you're big into podcasts. At least I hope you are. Probably spend a lot of time doing it. You can control the music application, or really any music that's playing, from your iOS or Android device through the Pebble. Now, this is super cool. I will play podcasts through my car Bluetooth system, on my Bluetooth speakers at home, or through my LG Tone headset I've talked about in previous episodes. Well, if I want to skip a commercial, or I want to go to the next episode, or just pause it because somebody has approached me and speaking to me, I can actually pause it straight from my wrist, and it's easy to get in and out of. There's a recent update to Pebble that has quick launch settings. I hold the bottom right button, boom, into the music player. Another tap pauses the music or skips it, skips through the commercials. It's wonderful. I really like the convenience. Again, what I say about the Pebble altogether is that if you've never had a smartwatch on, it probably sounds dumb. You probably wouldn't, agree with the value proposition it may offer. But if you get a Best Buy gift card for the upcoming holidays and there is a Pebble in stock and you want to try something new and you're a lover of technology like me, give the original Pebble a shot. I really think you'll dig it. I know that I have. So that's my tech pro tip section we'll open the show with this week. But let's get into the meat and potatoes. Let's talk about why we're here on the Podcast Digest. That is our show recommendations, and I've got 2 great ones for you again this week. Excited to bring these to you and highlight 2 great shows out there. The first one is a guy who does amazing work up in Toronto, who has been exceedingly cool with me on Twitter, talks back and forth. We've exchanged a little bit of our experiences so far. He's been very supportive of my show announcements, and I've tried to do the same with his. The show is called The DoOver, and let me spell that for you. D-E-W, the D-E-W over. The DoOver is the name of the show, kind of like Mountain Dew. Where did that come from? Well, it's his name. It's the host. His name is Jamie Dew. He can be found on Twitter at The DoOver. Again, Dew is D-E-W. Their website is thedoover.com. So far, his show is about 18 episodes in. It's about an hour long. And what's it about? It is about movies. It's got a really unique concept. Now, I've talked about a couple other movie or entertainment-based podcasts, and those are all great as well. How is this movie? That'll play, so on and so forth. But this one does a unique spin. The DoOver theme, if you will, is to look back at a previous year's worth of films and the results that occurred at the Oscars, specifically Best Picture, and to determine, does there need to be a do-over? Did the Oscars get it right or wrong, and why? Jamie assembles a whole crew of people, sometimes 3, 4, plus himself, and they go roundtable style, talk about the nominees for Best Picture that year, their strengths, their weaknesses. Did they like it? Does it hold up over time? And it's a really interesting format and a really interesting take on movies. Now, I will mention this one thing, because if you are going to jump out and listen to the DoOver, like I really hope that you will, there is a couple of things to highlight. Jamie is really trying to bite off a lot here. A panel-style show with multiple people talking and long form and this unique format. It does create some sound quality issues. I've spoke with Jamie before, and he is actively trying to combat those. I will say that earlier episodes, some of them were a little tough with some of the speakers, although in the last couple of months he's really hit his stride, and there are not nearly as many sound quality issues. Ironically enough, just this week with the most recent episode, he did tell me that there were maybe some more again in the most recent episode. I've not yet had a chance to catch that one, but just wanted to highlight that. But I really would want you to focus on the content and what these gentlemen and ladies discussion focus on about looking back at some of the best movies of a previous year. As I do try to highlight in any of my show recommendations, this is an adult show, does contain some language, so 18 and up, please. But one of the things about this, as I mentioned with a couple of other episodes, and I'm finding in my recommendation list, if you will, this to tend to be somewhat of a theme, is that if you listen to a podcast and then after you're done with it, it wants you to take some action. You feel motivated to go out and look up something on IMDb, or you want to go check out a particular website or research the backstory of a story you've just heard on one of the NPR shows or whatever. I think it's a great show. And after the DoOver, you will want to go back and watch some of these great movies and answer the question yourself, or formulate your own opinion. Did they get it right? Is the best picture that year, should it have been the best picture, or should it have been something else? And that to me is one of the hallmarks of an absolutely great show. There's other cool format type things that Jamie has put into the show. He has something called the Kid Canon segments. Jamie has 2 daughters, young girls, and he is looking for recommendations from his panel each time to recommend movies that they feel he needs to show his daughters before they turn 18. Sort of movies that are just required viewing, like part of growing up, they're must-sees. I think that's a great lens to look at films through, and makes me start to think about with my own kids, are there things they haven't seen yet that we must show to them as sort of part of growing up or part of a cultural education? So hearing those conversations is really kind of jogs your mind as well in terms of showing something to kids you're raising. Occasionally, he does have a few episodes that'll break format. He calls them cheeseburger chats, where literally Jamie and a couple of panel members will just kind of freeform movie talk, be it a top 5 list or just discuss, general movie chat, and they do it over cheeseburgers. It's got awesome content, great insights, a real deep dive on movies, and I would say this is a must listen for any film aficionado. Once again, check them out over at thedoover.com. That's DEW, thedoover.com, or follow Jamie on the show at the DoOver, which, as a side note, he's changed it to the Boo Over right now. Just in the title, it's still the same account to follow, the DoOver, but just for the month of October, which I thought was a nice touch, and I told him so on Twitter. Just kind of stood out to me. I'm like, hey, look at that. That's pretty cool. So that's this week's first recommendation on episode 8 of the Podcast Digest. Jamie doing the great work he's doing at the DoOver. Check him out. Definitely worth your subscription. Show 2. We're on to show 2. Let's talk about show 2 this week. Another big tech podcast. Sorry guys, I am a huge tech fan. Hopefully you are if you're big into podcasting, or maybe you just want to learn more about it. This one comes from the brand new version, if you will, the second incarnation, now hosted and homed on Relay FM. The show's name is Clockwise. Clockwise is a discussion of technology issues. It's hosted by Jason Snell and Dan Morin, and they have a really unique format. Speaking of formats, I think there's something about the unique format of a show that really draws me in, draws my attention, because it sort of stands out from the crowd. Probably give me some inspiration into doing some unique formatting things here. But anyways, I digress. They cover 4 tech topics, and they only spend 5 minutes each on each topic, and no more than 30 minutes per episode. Kind of a get in, get out. It's panel style, so it's Jason Snell, Dan Morin, and two guests. And this is a regular, repeatable format that they do. It's brief enough to consume without too much time commitment, and it's absolutely dense and packed from information. Sort of like the Daily Tech News Show with Tom Merritt I recommended last week in episode 7. These guys really accomplish the density and entertainment and information and discussion about as good as you can in the time that they try to do it. So let me say, these guys are just pro-level podcasters. The format's very tight. The sound quality is absolutely perfect. It's an ever-rotating panel of guests that keep things really interesting. So it's sort of a slightly different dynamic each week. If you're a big tech geek like me, you may have heard recently about Jason and Dan recently being laid off from Macworld and their parent IDG. That outfit's abandoned its print publication, and actually just this week they talked about putting on a hiatus Macworld iWorld as well. And while I've never been subscribed to the print magazine itself, I am a fan of Jason and Dan. They are great writers. I've read their stuff on the Macworld website. They've got an extremely balanced, well thought out perspective on all things tech, especially Apple stuff, which I've mentioned I am a fan of. I've listened to conference talks like the recently completed Singleton conference from 2013. Dan Morin gave a great talk there about, a process he was going through to write his book. And Jason Snell is just all over in the podcast world. The Incomparable, he's on This Week in Tech and Upgrade, another show on Relay FM. These guys are really worth listening to if you are a fan of technology. And what's also interesting, or at least makes Clockwise more interesting, is that with Jason and Dan's recent departure from IDG, Clockwise moved to Relay, and Relay FM is a podcast network. Maybe you've heard of it, maybe you've not. Again, if you are a technology fan, go to relay.fm. They're building their show catalog, a lot of great shows from a lot of big names in technology. Relay FM was founded by Mike Hurley and Stephen Hackett, who are also on several of the podcasts. If you've not checked it out, go do so. But Jason and Dan, because they've left IDG and are now with Relay FM, they've sort of expanded the different type of guests that they bring on the show, and really adds a lot more variety and sort of freshen things up a bit. So definitely check out Clockwise. The website is relay.fm/clockwise. The host, Jason Snell, is at jsnell, and Dan Morin at dmorin. Both of those can be found on Twitter. And I highly do suggest you check out Clockwise or the other shows on relay.fm. So those are my 2 show recommendations for this week. What'd you think? Let me know on Twitter. I am at Pod Digest, or check out the website. Leave a comment on the post when this show is live, thepodcastdigest.info. Also, don't forget, on Facebook, search for The Podcast Digest. There is a nice little group there. I'm building some likes and putting some announcements there, some additional kind of posts where I talk about the process. So the Facebook group is growing as well. Check us out there. And of course, iTunes reviews, Stitcher reviews. I'd really like to know how you guys are consuming the show. If you would like to find me on Twitter, follow me there, shoot me a quick message. Did you hear about the show on Stitcher, the new Player FM, which we are on now? Or did you find it through iTunes or a podcast app on Android, or however you've come across the Podcast Digest? I thank you for being here. I thank you for spending these, 20 minutes or so with me each and every week. I really enjoy doing this. I can't wait to come back again next week for episode 9 with some more great podcast recommendations. I hope you're building your catalog. I hope it's getting bigger and bigger, and I hope all of your time is being consumed with some great audio entertainment. Thank you again for listening, guys. This is Dan Lizette for the Podcast Digest, and I will talk to you again next week.